welcome to the Media Club podcast. Last month, we discussed our thoughts on the American education system. Now, before we begin with today's topic, we're just going to introduce our speakers by mentioning our name, grade, and school, and answering the question, if you can master any language, not English, what would it be and why? I'm Joseph. I go to Cypress High School. I'm a junior. If I could master any language, it would probably be Mandarin because a lot of people speak Mandarin and it seems to be a more popular language, especially as there's more Chinese businesses and there's more Chinese media being put out in the world. It seems like it would be useful to know.
Hi, my name is Josephine and I'm a sixth grader at Chadwick International. And if I could master any language, it probably would be Russian since a minority speak Russian, I guess.
Hi, my name is Scarlett Chang. I'm a sophomore at Sunny Hills High School, and if I could master any language, it would be French because I just think it sounds really sophisticated.
My name is Yuna. I'm a junior at Yorba High School, and I would also learn French because I think it's really pretty.
Hi, my name is Kaylin Kim, and I'm a junior at Sunny Hills High School. And if I could master any language, I would probably choose Portuguese because I think it's so complex and beautiful.
Hi, my name is Julie, and I'm junior, and I go to Berkeley Christian High School. And if I master any language, it will be Spanish because I'm learning Spanish right now.
My name is Nathan. I'm a senior at Troy High School, and I would also like to master Spanish because I failed at that class.
Hi, my name is Yenny, and I'm a junior at Oxford Academy. And just like Nathan and Julie, I'd also like to master Spanish because I'm learning it at school.
All right, with that being said, let's just go around very quickly and let's just talk about some of like the languages we know. So me personally, I know 3 different languages. I know English, I know Korean, and I'm learning American Sign Language at school, which I don't think a lot of schools have. And so I thought that would be pretty interesting to take at school.
I know a bit Spanish and Chinese, but I think it would take a bit time to understand these languages probably.
And typically in like middle school and high school, they offer language courses. And you're still in elementary school, right? And so do they offer any like language courses in elementary school for you guys?
They do offer a diverse languages at school, but they don't really recommend Korean, I guess.
I know Korean, English, and I'm learning Spanish right now in school.
Same with Scarlett. I know Korean, English, and I'm learning Spanish.
I also know Korean and English, but I'm learning Spanish from school.
I can speak Korean and English, and I know a bit of Chinese and Spanish.
I really only know English and Korean.
Did you just opt out of the language courses in high school?
Well, I took Spanish and I did terrible, so I'm not going to count that.
All right, that's fair. Yenny?
Yeah, I'm also doing Spanish, and I know English and Korean. I was going to take another language, but there were no options. I only had to choose between Korean and Spanish, but I already know Korean, so.
Right. And so it seems like Spanish is like a very popular choice for languages to take at school. Can some of y'all just like explain why you decided to take Spanish?
For me, I had no choice because like in middle school, they made me take Spanish and I just carried that throughout high school.
In our school, they only offer the Spanish course, so that's why I take Spanish.
For me, there was also like, I think German, Chinese, and Korean, but I already knew Korean. And then I felt like Spanish was the next best choice because it's similar to English, but also a lot of people use it. So I could apply it in a lot of different ways.
Right. Especially like in the United States and like more specifically, like even California, where we are. I feel like there's like a lot of people who speak Spanish here, and so it's like very useful for communication. And even just generally in the world, I think Spanish is like up there in terms of the most spoken language. And so yeah, definitely a useful language. Do you think that speaking a language is, or speaking another language other than like your native tongue is important? And if so, why?
I think learning a other language makes me like to have to know other like culture or like to make more diverse cultural.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so do you think that like language and culture goes hand in hand? Do you think that you can, for instance, learn the language but not the culture behind the language, or do you think that you need to kind of learn it together?
I think together because I think like language and the culture is really connected.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think it's really useful because throughout interactions in your life, if you're only limited to one language, you'll also be only limited to like obtaining the knowledge of people who speak that language. And I think if you know other language, there's like a larger variety of knowledge you can obtain.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. Especially like going into the culture discussion again, different like cultures have different ways of thinking about certain things. And so just like learning the culture and learning the language would be really helpful in doing that.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of practicality, also, especially in the job market today, it's really useful to know at least another language so you can help out your future job because we're so culturally diverse, especially in California. But in general, we're starting to become a very diverse population, and knowing more than, I'd say, at least two languages would be very helpful for your future jobs.
And so going back into like that discussion of more of us being like speaking more languages and us being able to just like meet more people across the world and even like in the US that speak a lot of languages, do you think that like the future is multilingual and multicultural, or do you think that it's going to stay the same or even reduce down to a more like singular language or a singular culture, um, respective of the countries?
I think globally we're gonna like narrow down to a few languages, mainly because of globalization and how like one language is really influencing all the others, which is English. Because now most countries, everybody knows at least a little bit of English, and I think that'll demotivate people to learn other languages.
Why do you think that like English is such like a popular language?
I think because the US is a really prominent figure in like politics and culture, pop culture in general, that people are influenced to learn it.
And so like if you were to kind of guess or kind of make like an educated guess on like what language would be next in terms of it being more multicultural and it being more popular in the future, what culture would, or what language, excuse me, would you foresee?
After English, probably Mandarin would be the most popular.
Yeah, definitely. And like Scarlett mentioned, I think that like there is definitely like a pop culture aspect to this conversation, where it's like um, countries with like a lot of like, let's say, movies or songs or just media in general, they have like a wider audience to the world. And so I think that happened especially with like Korean as well. And so that's very interesting.
I kind of agree with what Scarlett said, but also in the beginning, I guess we're going to be mixing our cultures together, so it will be multicultural, but then it'll slowly develop into like one entire mixed like culture.
Yeah, that is a really good point.
Along with Yenny and Scarlett, I do think like English is going to be like the most primary language because like for Korean, there's like some words that are English, like pizza. It's also pizza in Korean, and like TV. And also, I think we're gonna be like more mixed in languages because like traveling is becoming more accessible and easier to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like even I would say like even like 50 or 70 years ago in like the 1950s, like it wouldn't be very common to see, I don't know, maybe like a Swedish person married to like a Mongolian person, right? And so like that relationship that like we're building like through the world where there's just like more people meeting, whether that be like through just like getting married or becoming friends or things like that, just like having those interactions are more common across like a more wide scope of countries, I think. And so going back to like the conversation of just languages and the benefits of learning languages, what language would you want to kind of get better at? Like given the work that you need to put in.
If there was a language, I probably would try to improve my Russian because I thought that Russian was really cool, but it seems to be a hard language to learn. So if I work really hard or improve my skills, I probably could learn a bit of Russian.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a very difficult language.
For me, like even though I speak Korean at home and like learned it for a lot of my younger years, I feel like I'd still want to get better at Korean because like it's still my culture and there's a lot that I can improve on still.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so, just like a quick show of hands, whose like mother tongue is Korean? Is anyone's maybe like different? Oh wait, no, I think everyone raised their hands. Okay, and so like just because like all of us, our mother tongues are Korean, like how has that affected the way you learn languages and the way like you see languages?
Well, I'd say especially since we're all pretty familiar with it, probably most families knowing Korean, it makes our culture a lot different from what other people expect. Not sure what perspective I could offer against others, but uh, especially for like knowing languages, I'd say knowing Korean makes it easier to communicate with other Asian people, I'd say, even though we don't speak the same language, it just becomes generally easier to kind of understand their perspective versus other.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point. Like even within the language, I feel like Korean has like a lot of overlap with other Asian languages in terms of like I don't know, like sentence structure, grammar, etc., etc. But like even like the cultural aspect of it, I definitely would agree that just learning that language and knowing that language just makes us very culturally aware of Asian culture in general.
I think maybe it kind of limited my personal language like growth because I was like, oh, I already know two languages, and I was kind of less motivated to learn another one because I felt that I was like already kind of ahead of people who didn't know, who weren't bilingual. And so I think now that I'm like required to take a language class, I've expanded my language knowledge, but earlier knowing Korean like made me feel already set in knowing two languages.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Yeah, I had kind of had the same experience where it's like I just thought that like I would be set because I already know two languages. And so like going into high school as I took ASL, which is not a like a extremely common language, but like a very different type of language compared to just like verbally spoken languages. I wanted to kind of like expand my horizons. So I definitely know what you mean. Now let's go back to just like talking about school. We've obviously like talked about how learning another foreign language is very beneficial, but do you think that it should be a requirement for graduation?
My school, it already is a requirement for graduation, and I think that's really good because it kind of forces people to broaden their languages.
I think it is necessary for people to learn other languages besides English because, yeah, it expands our knowledge on other people's cultures because not only are you learning the language in that class, you're also learning about their culture.
I think that they should, like, even if it's not like 3 or 4 years, I feel like 1 or 2 is good enough, because especially if you're going to like a diverse school, you get to learn about other people's cultures, and it can help you like in the long run with your future. For example, business.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like um there really are no like bad parts about learning a foreign language in school. There's just like, but I feel like there is like an argument to be made. And so if I'm playing devil's advocate, there's like an argument that like maybe that class is less necessary than perhaps like a business class or like a financial literacy class. And so do you think that you would put these life skills such as financial literacy or business um, on the same level as a language class?
I feel like that's hard to say, because in college, I feel like there are a lot of classes like that teach about business, but then in high school there isn't that much of a variety. And also like in colleges, there's a lot fewer language classes. So I feel like it's better to get that early on.
And Jenny, I know that you said that you also support learning, like making it a requirement in schools. Would you also agree with Kaylin that like just the timing of it is high school should have these language classes and then you should have these other life skills in college, or would you disagree with that?
I would agree with that, but you can also take business classes in high school to get early exposure to it. But I don't think they're like, I think they're pretty like equal in how important they are.
Yeah, definitely. Like Jenny mentioned, it's not like always one or the other. Oftentimes, like students have like a lot of electives, so they can pick and choose. I think that's a really good point. Kind of a more lighthearted question. Do you think that we like think in languages? And if so, what language do you think that you think in?
Probably Spanish, but I'm like a beginner, so I shouldn't say that I really think it in that.
I feel like we do think in languages. I think mostly in English, but sometimes in Korean.
I don't think in language, but if I did, I would pick English.
I think in English.
I also think English. It's important.
Yeah, I think we definitely think to ourselves in a language. I catch myself thinking in English most of the time.
I think when I speak in either Spanish or Korean, I just naturally translate from English. So I guess I think in English.
Yeah, I actually had like a really interesting discussion about this with my friend like a while back. Me personally, I don't think that like humans think in languages. It kind of goes into like this entire thing that me and my friend were talking about. But me personally, I think that like in order for us to conceptualize ideas and like verbalize them, we need language as like a medium to do so. But I think that like our thoughts are just like rather like kind of almost impulses. And so like going back to the example of like, oh, I should brush my teeth or I should go eat breakfast. I feel like we don't really think that in a language. Rather, it's just our bodies wanting to do so, like wanting to go to the restroom and brush our teeth or wanting to I don't know, go downstairs and eat breakfast or things like that. And so I don't think like we really tell ourselves in a certain language, like, oh, we should do this, we should do that, etc., etc. My friend disagreed with me, but I'm not sure. So I think this is like a really open-ended question. I think it would also be like really interesting to see like the actual science behind it. And so, yeah. Now, just kind of wrapping up the discussion, in the future, do you think that you have like a very important use case for the languages you know? I think Nathan, you mentioned that like, or sorry, Kaylin, that you mentioned that like in when you're trying to get a job, that employers usually like it if you're multilingual. Do you think that that will personally like help you in the job that you want to get?
I'm not really sure like what job specifically I want, but then let's say like if I work for like a big corporation, if I ever get sent to like an overseas office, I feel like it would be really helpful or just helping clients that are like foreign clients who don't necessarily speak English. Like, for example, like my grandpa works in real estate and then he also speaks English. So in Korea, like whenever he's working, he always gets like the foreign clients and helps them find houses and stuff.
And Nathan, I think you also mentioned like foreign languages being good for employment. Do you think that this will like personally help you?
Yeah, I think in the future I'll be able to say on my resume or stuff that I'm fluent in at least Korean, and that probably will help me find a job because I've noticed that during my internship, having written that down really helped me, and it gave me an opportunity to work in different divisions of the company. So I think putting that down for on your resume or just telling that to them in an interview, it really shows them that you at least know your stuff and they can count on you to communicate better.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I feel like even past employment, like Kaylin and Nathan mentioned, just having that skill set enables you to not only like get the job that you want, but also like um have a lot of like mobility in terms of like working up in the company that you're working in and just like having access to, I don't know, like talking to foreign clients or moving through different like divisions in the company. That kind of wraps up our discussion on languages this month. And so thank you for tuning in to our podcast today. And make sure to also check out our previous podcast and also stay tuned for the podcast that's going to come out next month. Thank you.